think we are on. We are
Oh,
live.
we are live.
Right. Michele, thank you so much for joining me today. It's a delight.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Mm.
We should be good to go. Michele Mariscal, we're so delighted to have you here. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself. I've got a formal bio, of course, but tell us in a nutshell who you are and who you serve.
Yes, sure. Yes. So hi, everybody. I'm always happy to be in this conversation, and I'll give you a little background of why that is. One might think that the topic of anxiety is not something to be looking forward to talking about, but part of that is because in my own personal experience, uh, there is so much hidden, and these ways in which we feel like we're weak, or this shouldn't be happening, or I should be able to figure it out. And so the more that we're able to just relax into conversation about it and bring clarity and light, I think the better. So my background spans a couple different areas. My professional career was in training and development and worksite wellness. And so in that career, I was able to train a lot into holistic stress management and HeartMath. And then in my own personal life, when I began to experience many losses, loss after loss after loss, I began to seek tools that could help me with that. So I've retired from that career job and now really focus on this grief and loss area, and also the HeartMath work, because there's such powerful tools to help us with our nervous system, our immune systems, and our hormonal systems, all of which can get disrupted in anxiety.
Lovely. Yes. And your personal experience is what's really fascinating. I mean, when we've lived it, that's when we really know how to escort people, how to show up fully and how to hold that really important space. And I know that you've helped so many people navigating deep loss, and the work that we do inside the anxiety release protocol, helping people go from panic to power. Oftentimes we find that clients actually have this sense of identity that they're happy to step out of at first. And then when it really comes down to it, it gets a little scary. Who am I without this ability to have people come to my rescue? Or there can be this sense of identity loss, even though they really don't want to experience anxiety anymore. They don't want to experience panic. And have you worked with people as they navigate those tides?
Yes, and that I I think that a way to look at this is, we, in any experience that we're having, and the science of emotions really helps us understand this too, that when we experience emotions over and over and over, we are laying down neural tracks, and our body, our psyche, starts to look for something that matches that out in the world, even if it's dysfunctional. So that doesn't make logical sense, but that really is why, when we're trying to step out of this way of being that is so, we may have normalized this dysfunctional way of being, that it can feel a little scary and really hard to step into something else, because we don't know what that something else is. And I think fear of the unknown is a very common fear for those of us, especially high functioning, high achieving. We got plans and we got contingency plans if that plan doesn't work out. And when we are really stepping into and letting go of something that we have known, it can bring its challenges, but it's possible, again, going back to recognizing that all of these experiences are laying down neural tracks. And if we just and this is where the gentleness comes, this is where relaxing into conversation about it is so helpful. You are creating a new emotional package around describing who you are. Like, maybe once in a while I'll still go there and that feels comfortable. But for now, let me just try this on. Let me let go of that and just for a little bit try to work in laying down a new neural track. I think that's one of the most exciting things in the neurology field is all of this research around neuroplasticity. And the message that I think we can all hang on to is that you can do this. It's just kind of a gentle walk through it.
Do you find that some of your clients or anyone that you speak to about grief and loss, especially in this modern time that we all live in, do you find that just the length of time that it might take to, as you call these new neural pathways, these new tracks that we're laying down, that some people are frustrated with, they're wanting it, they're kind of caught off guard, first of all, when they have panic and anxiety take over, and then they expect for the healing itself to happen rather quickly, even though they're maybe not aware of how many years or even decades they've been ignoring the little quiet signals. Can you speak to that?
Sure. And what's coming to mind in that is in the world of healing, we could speak to any kind of healing. There's always this sense of we take a step into awareness. Awareness is the first piece, and we begin to have a heightened sense of consciousness around our experience. That's the first step. Then the second step is recognizing that you have choice. And that in itself that's a big one. And where some of that fear of letting go of the identity might trip us up. Like, well, I don't know. Am I ready for that? But that second step really is knowing that you have choice. And so sometimes you may choose you may choose something else to introduce your heart to as an emotion. Ask your brain to come along with it, see how that feels. And again, there's so many different tools and lots of ways that can happen, but just the context of understanding. First step, awareness. Second step, recognizing you have choice. Sometimes you might make it, sometimes you might not. Third step, coming to that choice point and seeing it clearly and having created a different experience, you're able to move in that other direction. So again, depending on how deep and sometimes in grief and loss, when I'm working with people, I give them this analogy of rubber bands. If you've ever been a person who made a ball of rubber bands, I never did, but I had a coworker who did. Emotions can be like that. And as you are peeling back and peeling back, the degree to which that rubber band ball has been built and your strength and attention to just keep allowing yourself to pull those rubber bands off. Other people relate to that as the onion. I like the rubber bands. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's so interesting how you talk about the heart first and then the brain. And we're talking about the fact that grief can sometimes lead to panic and anxiety years or even decades later because of unprocessed emotions that have maybe been wound very tightly in this beautiful analogy of these rubber bands. And the science is really clear that our bodies carry these stress patterns, even if we're not consciously aware of them. And then that awareness, that recognition that we don't have to keep carrying it, really allows us to step into power and step out of that sense of victimhood, which grief itself is a state of some sort of victimhood. Can you elaborate on how you might approach that with clients?
Yes, and for clarification, grief can take us into victimhood, grief in and of its own. And again, I think this is where some of this anxiety even might start weaving itself in us, because truly grief is normal and natural. The issue is, and the problem so much in our culture, is that we're not a culture that does grief well. We're not like an indigenous culture who comes together and wails together and, you know, honors grief in the ways that would be helpful to process it. And so there can begin to be this hidden aspect of it. And one of the things that can happen if we don't have the tools and we're not processing a lot of the, what I find with people is there's a lot of undelivered emotional communications. And what I mean by that is many times in grief, what becomes problematic are the regrets that we might start to feel. Some people say they feel guilt. I wish I would have said or done that more or differently. All of those things can start to really spin up into this sense of victimhood, simply by not having the tools and by not doing processes that help us get those emotions moving. It could be art, it could be body work. So I'll give you an example from my life. The most important person in my life when I was 31 years old was my little brother, Martin. And he was 28 years old. Right at the beginning of his career, he had just passed the bar and became a working attorney. And then he was diagnosed with leukemia and died 2.5 months later. And that was a period in my life that there wasn't a word for suicidality then, but that is what we would call it today. I just didn't want to be on this planet without my person. He was my person. I had not found a husband yet. And my brother was such a good friend. So what ended up happening for me is over and over and over, I would find myself so despondent. And if something went wrong in my life, it was because my brother died. Oh, woe was me. It was almost, and I couldn't see it for years and years. It was about 10 years that I hadn't really seen how each experience in my life, because my brother died, it went this way that wasn't so great, or how I wanted it, or this or that or the other. And it really wasn't until I realized I had actually enshrined my brother. That's a word that I use for people. We can either have people in our life that have been so terrible to us that there can be bedevilment, and there can be those people in our life that we feel like we just can't even be the person we're supposed to be without them. And that becomes enshrinement. And in both those avenues, we find ourselves right in that victim mode. And so I'm trying to think if there was another part to the question. Is that where we wanted to come to?
About it in your body, like these, how this is so wound up in the body and without our conscious awareness, really.
Yes. So a part of it is the emotions that have that continue to work in us are, they're what I call really low level, under the radar emotions. And in the work of HeartMath, one of the things I really like that they distinguish is that you can actually be in a relaxed state and still have these depleting emotions that are firing to your brain. So you may be taking a beautiful walk or taking a yoga class. If you are unaware of these emotions of sad, despondent, maybe one, helpless, or maybe helplessness, that is firing signals from your heart to your brain that are shifting the signals in your nervous system. And then the nervous system affects the hormone flows, and you can see how that then just becomes and the immune system as well. So all three of those systems can be affected. So many of my clients, we can look back and see the onset of certain disease or conditions. And that was certainly true in my life. In 1 year, because of this inability to process these emotions, I had skin cancer and had a hysterectomy, and also that was the year that divorce was happening. So lots of things in the body that begin to show up on the physical realm, on the physical plane, started maybe a long time ago with these emotions that just kept creating discord in the nervous system, discord in the hormonal system, and discord then in the immune. So yeah, it's a very researched area. Yeah.
Yeah, this downward spiral can, of course, be turned into an upward spiral. And we just know from nature
Yes.
that whether it's the Fibonacci spiral or pi, there's this aspect of seeing these repeating patterns unless we shift the nervous system, unless we face the emotions that we as a society tend to suppress. People will say things like, get over it. It doesn't matter if it's a death or the death of a relationship, like a heartbreak, or even layoffs, which we have massive layoffs that have been occurring in waves in this country. And these things get wired into our nervous system in layers, and then our bodies carry these stress patterns. And it's like that rubber band ball, or I think of a cloud. The cloud will only take so much until it finally breaks
Yeah.
open.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
can you share with us an insight or two that helped you find peace, or maybe that you regularly share with clients? Because everyone wants a quick fix, of course. They want the quick
Yeah.
tips, they want the hacks, even though it's taken us years or decades to get into this state. But what's one way to shift into creatorship out of victimhood?
Yes. So the path for me, of course, at that time, I was doing lots and lots of work on the physical plane. And the path for me was really recognizing this is happening on several levels. This is in my physical body, it's in my emotional body, it's in my mental body, and it's also now in this spiritual part of myself, that higher self of me that wants to grow and know myself. So I think, and that was actually a part of what this all of this grief brought to me, was a more expanded understanding of what is this bringing to me. And that's actually a very powerful tool. And I know we've been hearing this in a couple different ways from others who do work in that area. What is this bringing to me?
Mm.
rather than why is this happening to me? That is one of the most powerful shifts that you can, and you may have to say it over and over, but one of the things I encourage people to do is to actually go look in the mirror. You know how we say the eyes are the mirror to your soul? Just go have a conversation with yourself in the mirror and ask yourself that question: what is this bringing to me? And just hang there for a little bit. It might be uncomfortable if you've never done mirror work, peering into your own soul, but that idea that we can turn this spiral around. There is a reversal that's actually kind of an esoteric understanding of these expansion and contraction of experiences in everything, including anxiety and any other physical thing that we are experience. What is here for me? And on a very practical note, I did at that time begin to really seek out ways in which I could begin to express emotion. So some of that was art. I found the work that I do now with people. So there's a variety of ways, but it really is that first step of deciding, well, I could continue this, but this really stinks, and I choose something else. I mean, I went all the way when I first started this conversation with myself, laying on the couch. I'd been in the whole weekend. I hadn't gone anywhere. And I was just so tired of feeling that way. And just said, I choose joy. I choose joy. So just little by little, letting myself recognize that, yes, these emotions and what brought me here are valid, and these experiences, especially when it's what's like panic attacks and things like that that come on, scary. And also, I got me. I'm here. I'm all here, and I'm listening. So having, taking on that stance of I'm listening is really helpful.
Absolutely. The mirror work is something that I've used for a long time. And that when I first started doing it, it was very uncomfortable, which is
Very
curious because most ambitious women, most ambitious humans will readily admit that they are interested in optimization, self-optimization. They want to get better. However, they're not interested in getting to know themselves. And with any endeavor, we have to do the due diligence to understand what's there. If we're going to purchase a business or a building or
Yes.
start a business, we need to know the landscape. And everyone is they're all consumed with the 3Ds, which in my book is deny, distract, dissociate. If I can just do this, if I can just accomplish this, if I can just attain this, then I'll feel better. And then we reach it and we don't feel better. We just set our sights on the next goal. And the 3Ds are not going to allow us to stop the downward spiral and learn to spin within. It's when we actually get to know ourselves. Maybe it begins with being able to look ourselves in the eye. Maybe it begins with real self-inquiry and that metacognition, that thinking about the thinking. I like to use the analogy to step out of victimhood. I have a Top Golf down the street. And it's probably not likely, but it's possible that a golf ball could come into my window. I've got two big windows right here. And if a golf ball were to come into my window and destroy the window and things around it, I can complain and I can say, who did that? And I can allow my nervous system to be dysregulated and I can say all kinds of things in my head. But the reality is that no matter whose fault it is, it's my responsibility to pick up the pieces, to protect. I've got four-legged animals here, three two-legged humans here. We need to obviously protect ourselves from the elements. And so it doesn't matter how quick the damage happened or how extensive the damage is. We have that choice to say, okay, I'm not going to, what do you called it, undelivered emotional communications, this powerlessness spinning in the past. I wish I would have boarded up the window. I wish I would have moved to a different place so that I don't have a golf ball coming into my window. I wish I would have. It does nothing. It's just us spinning in that undelivered emotional turmoil that doesn't serve us, because there's only one place that we can be right now and only one thing that we can do moving forward. And the real power lies in, as you said, the way we hold it, because we can choose to hold it as I get to do this instead of I have to do this. And I remember when we first had this conversation several weeks ago over coffee, you talked about this conception of there's a big difference in grief when something is willfully given up versus taken away from us. And even when we step into a place of power, step out of victimhood and say, I am done with this anxiety. I am done with having panic. I am choosing my destiny. Sometimes my clients still struggle with this concept of, but this is being taken away from me by myself. I'm taking this away from myself. It's this subconscious glitch. Have you experienced any of that?
Yes, that identity loss. A lot of times when where I see this kind of identity loss is from any kind of role that a person has had. So very often moms and dads, when kids are going off to college, this is, of course, like, oh, leave the nest. And then there's that, oh my goodness, that's wow, unexpected, maybe really unexpected emotions. And so I always recommend and coach people to realize that any shift in our identity may, it doesn't always, but very often brings up these feelings from the void. Where did that come from? Because I really wanted this gone. But the thing about loss, another definition of loss that I think is helpful here is um, grief is any change or end of a familiar pattern of behavior. And that is cause for grief. So when we use that working definition, we can understand why, even when it's something that is being ushered out and we're being very powerful with it, it still may bring these things up, and that's okay. That's okay. We just want to say, oh, I see you and I feel you. I'm gonna let myself feel that, because I'm moving into something new, and this is just the unknown. This is the void coming up in me, saying what it's trying to say to me. And I can do this. But that's very common in any shift, any change or end of behavior, that can be cause for a feeling of loss or grief. Yeah.
And what do you say to people who say, like, what you experienced with your best friend, your brother, who say, like, I did not choose this. This is not what I wanted. This is not
Mhm.
a contract that I'm willing to say yes to. I don't want to say that I chose this change. How do we step into a
Mhm.
place of power?
Sure. Yeah. And for, let me think, have I ever actually used those words? Yeah. Sure, I ever have used the words I chose this. I have, in my experience, been able to, with my brother, I'm speaking specifically to my brother. I got to this place of recognizing relationship and what was coming from this continuing relationship, and accepting the change and acknowledging and appreciating how even all these years later, that the shifts and the changes that have occurred, and my relationship that I still have with him in the ways that I do on the spiritual, mental, emotional. He's just not here physically, but there are ways in which, you know, he still has a living place. It shifts and changes. So I don't ever push someone to get to that. I know I chose this because on some level that can feel not completely authentic to them. I mean, in the big picture, I am one who does know that I came to this life to have certain experiences and move with them in and find grace and acceptance with them, and the continuing the journey. Sometimes some of these things are a continuing journey, a pathway that we continue to walk through. It's almost like it becomes a source of knowing in us, a source of contribution in us. That term, the wounded healer, when we take full responsibility. And so I am saying taking responsibility is necessary. That absolutely. Taking responsibility for who we're being around this loss is necessary. And that's the way that we can begin to unravel the emotions that are all tied up, and then to begin to see what is shifting for me in this, what is changing, what is available now. Yeah, so it's a gentle conversation, but that at least 1% responsibility comes very early on. And typically, if I say, can you take 1% responsibility for this, that is available to people, and that's a great starting place. Yes, because then you've stepped into the movement forward.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
beautiful. That's really beautiful. Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour, and you and I have some fun planned. This
Ooh.
is our live event here on Facebook. We are going to take this conversation into a 3-day event where we're going to really take a deep dive into recognizing the ways that panic and anxiety show up in our lives, the grief surrounding it, and the real actionable tools we can use to get into the body and free the mind and really rewire from the inside out. We're going to do that on 3 consecutive days on August 5, 6, and 7 at 2 p.m. Eastern. That's 11 a.m. Pacific time. And this is going to be an in-depth live conversation with interaction. We have VIP tickets that are on a special early bird discount. You'll find the link. Those are only available until July 15. Very limited spots available. And those people who have the VIP access will be able to interact live. They'll get extra time live with Michele and myself after the event on all 3 days. And they'll have access to all of the replays if they cannot be there live. We would love for you to join us for this event that is entitled Beyond the Spiral. So often we can get caught in that downward spiral, and this is about learning to reclaim and choose that upward spiral where we really have power, where we can really step into our fullness and choose that expansion instead of the contraction, because those contractive feelings don't feel good. And we know that joy and happiness is our birthright. We get to choose how to hold things. And at the same time, sometimes we just need somebody to point us in the right direction. So I'm really delighted to coordinate with you and collaborate with you on this because, panic and anxiety, overwhelming stress, chronic stress may be part of somebody's story up until a certain point in their lives. And then they get to choose to write the next chapters. And because we've worked with clients and seen this ability to choose, this ability to reframe and really step out of some of those ideations that can feel really powerless, this is why we're bringing this extended full access 3 live workshop days. Anything you'd like to say about what people can experience and what they might find?
Yes. I think as I started this conversation, I think the breath of fresh air that it is to even be able to be in conversation and gain these new contexts of understanding, it is so helpful. And again, just speaking back to how we are about anxiety and panic and loss and grief and overwhelm, we see it as, by and large, we see it as a weakness and something we should be able to push through because we're so built on rewarding productivity and we're highly skilled, we're smart people, and we should be able to just push through. And so I think providing several different contexts of understanding, metaphor. I like to paint pictures in a lot of different ways so people can find themselves in it, so they can take that breath and say, oh yeah, that's helpful. That's a little bit more clarity. I'm not weak, or there's nothing wrong with me. This is an experience that I'm having and I'm moving through it. And that I think is very key also, to come and be a part of this so that you see this is an experience that you are and can move through. You can. The other thing, I wrote a couple different notes. Yeah, just having this also tools. I love tools. So I will be introducing some tools. And today we talked about the soul gazing. That's what I like to call it, looking in the mirror and asking yourself, what is this bringing to me? What do you need? Any of those kinds of questions. That's a tool, and I'll be bringing more like that. And then just having you feel empowered that you have a plan, and again, not the kind of productivity plan that we're used to doing, but actually a plan of gentle care that moves you very powerfully in this direction that you are wanting to move into. And so by plan, typically what I'm speaking of there is knowing some things, where in my day might these tools live, so that this is a part of my self-care. And just like the meeting at 1, 2, and 3 o'clock on my planner, I also have in there self-care. Yeah.
So important to take time for ourselves, which can be the hardest thing to do. We think we might feel better once we serve more, once we accomplish things on our to-do list, but just like that beautiful analogy that I use so often that you alluded to, the expansions and contractions of life. We cannot have the inhale without the exhale. And one
Mhm.
that I've really played with a lot as a sound healer is it's the space between the notes and the sounds that make them. One long continuous sound isn't beautiful. We need those contractive moments in order to feel the expansions. And it's like when you feel that crunch, I've done it so long, so many times that I've reprogrammed myself to where I'm like, ooh, this feels hard. It's about to get really good. I have those days that bring me to my knees and tears and gosh, this is really hard. I know a big expansion is coming because it's a pendulum. As far as it swings one way, it's going to swing the other way. And so when things get hard, we get to hold it as how can I turn this and turn it into something where I feel like I'm in control, where I've got some power.
Mhm. Yes, yes, I had, thank you for mentioning that, the space in between silence. One of the things that I think is so uncomfortable for highly driven, smart people is to sit in silence. Just how comfortable are we just, and that can be a training it, a way of helping ourselves learn how to pay attention to the pauses and know that this is a this is how it goes. It's just like breathing, expansion, contraction. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What we do find with our clients who are in active panicky moments or unable to calm the nervous system on a regular basis is that silence can be deafening. It can be very difficult.
Very
So,
uncomfortable.
yeah, the anxiety release protocol does not call for any of those moments of silence. We really give actionable tools that allow us to feel powerful and to get into that rhythm, that flow without needing to still the body completely. And then as we
Yes.
gain more control, then later on, we can actually sit in more of a silent reverence. But at first it can feel really scary to be quiet because of all of the rumblings underneath the proverbial skin and the literal skin. And yeah, it's taken a lot of nervous system regulation on my part to be able to sit with that. At first, when I first tried to learn to meditate, I was like, forget it. There is no way I'm going to ever be able to do that. And I had to find the right tools in order to give the mind and the body, the breath, something to do so that we
Mhm.
can unlock that ability to actually find the stillness, to find the quiet.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, it's been such a pleasure to share this space with you. Thank you for your presence and all of your hard work and beautiful, expansive nature. You're so warm even across the
Yeah.
airwaves. And we will put in the comments a link so that people can find out how to join us with that VIP access. And
Great.
really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us.
Thank you.
All right.